Hello all, this is Warwolf. I'm coming at you with another video very quickly. This video will be a review along with my personal thoughts of AEW Dynamite for March the 15th, 2023. I hope you all enjoying yourselves. I know I most certainly am. And we are going to wait and see what else happens in the next few minutes. So, first and foremost, folks, we got a couple of things happening. We've got AEW Dynamite, and that is basically this puppy. So, we start off, gorgeous entrance for the show as ever. And speaking of entrances, we get one of the goofiest, as Maxwell Jacob Friedman comes to the ring looking to get himself, quote-unquote, re-bar mitzvahed. You heard me right, folks. This is actually a thing they were doing. And I guess Max kind of had something of a high opinion of himself. These kind of streamers are the kind of things you would see, at most parties, admittedly, but it's also the kind of thing you would have seen in wrestling promotions like Ring of Honor and New Japan, where streamers were thrown into the ring by fans to celebrate a favored wrestler. So, I mean, again, he's kind of, hyping himself up here. It's a standard heel move, I guess. Curiously enough, he started getting ready to basically put himself over, and he did just that, referencing his victory over Bryan Danielson. This is perfectly in keeping with his particular personality. He's a heel. He's just come off a major win, and Bryan Danielson, at least for the moment, has quote-unquote gone home. We don't know what that means. Since they were in Canada tonight, specifically Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, they decided to have him lean into that, and he references Bret Hart. Kind of an interesting little nod there, and I like the fact that they did pay attention to that small detail. A lot of wrestling companies would not be willing to take that particular shot. MJF did. Give him all the credit in the world for being willing to go there, I guess. He then decides he's going to call himself Iron Man as a reference to his victory over Bryan Danielson. Well, he doesn't get too much long into that before Jungle Boy makes his appearance. Now, for those of you who are just starting to become interested in All Elite Wrestling, Jungle Boy is, in fact, real name Jack Perry, and is the son of the late lamented 90210 star Luke Perry. So, yes, this is actually the son of one of the biggest TV show stars of the 90s. And, of course, they rebooted 90210 a couple of years ago. Obviously, Luke Perry has since passed, and we do send our condolences on to him. Shortly after, we get an appearance by one Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara, a former TNT champion on multiple occasions. And shortly after that, speaking of the TNT Championship, we get Darby Allen. Darby Allen is a former... Oh, that's interesting. Strangely enough, for some reason, folks, my picture of Darby is not working. That is odd. I'm not sure what that's all about. There we go. Darby arrives. And I'm still kind of confused as to why that didn't work, but okay. Again, folks, I'm just starting out with OBS. I'm going to have hiccups as we go. Please forgive me for those if you are willing to. So, we got all four men now basically in the ring. And Darby and Jungle Boy and Sammy, they are in the ring with MJF. And MJF immediately says, "What are you all after?" Simultaneously. Let me repeat this. Simultaneously. I don't know if they practiced this or not. And if they didn't, it's pretty damn impressive. All four of them are in the ring, obviously. MJF is sitting in one corner. The other three all answer simultaneously, I want a world title match. Jungle Boy starts us off immediately after that. He recounts his first match with MJF. Mentions, that MJF had to cheat to beat him. More than likely true, considering that is MJF's character. Says he's ready for a rematch, and this time he wants it for the world title. He says MJF has pretty much been handed everything in AEW, that the company basically revolves around him. MJF agrees with him. He may be a heel, but I guess at least we can say he's sort of honest. Well, that doesn't get too far into any kind of a one-on-one discussion, as Sammy Guevara then jumps in, and he jokingly threatens to turn the re-bar mitzvah into a recircumcision for MJF. He claims that MJF has basically kissed people's asses and lied and cheated to make his way not only into AEW, but to get all the way to the top. From a real-life standpoint, I don't know how much of that is true. From a storyline standpoint, that much is definitely true. Guevara also claims that he worked his way to the top. Recounts the fact that he has held 3 different championships, with AEW. This is absolutely true. Much like MJF, he kind of takes a shot at the audience. He also takes a shot at MJF. So almost immediately after taking that shot at the Canadian audience, he turns to Max and says, Max, I'm better than you and you know it. More specifically, he says, I'm the best ever and you know it. So that's literally a rib on MJF's catchphrase. MJF acknowledges it, but he doesn't get much farther into that before he's interrupted by Darby Allen. Allen makes one of probably the most hilarious comments of the night, saying, hold your applause till I'm done, please. Okay, I gotta give him points for originality for that. I don't think I've ever heard that before, and probably aren't likely to hear that anytime soon since. He claims he used to go to film school and dropped out of film school because he was told he would have to change everything about a film that he had apparently made and submitted to class. He dropped out, became a professional wrestler, and probably makes one of the most unique points of the entire promo. Says, I entered wrestling as Darby Allen, I will succeed as Darby Allen, or I will fail as Darby Allen, but I will never change a thing about myself. I'm largely paraphrasing, but this is pretty much what he said. I loved it. It's a really good insight into Darby's character, and anybody who's seen Darby wrestle knows what I'm talking about. He takes a shot at Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF, whatever you want to call him, about the fact that apparently MJF has done a lot of complaining on Twitter, and that so have a lot of other wrestlers in AEW. He demands a world title shot and says, well, if I don't get what I want, I'm going to go on Twitter and complain. Then turns around and says, no, I'm just going to beat the living hell out of you. Which is, again, a very nice little insight into Darby's character. And again, we know Darby isn't the kind of character who really goes online and complains on Twitter. I don't even know if he has done much on his social media, or if he even has a presence on it. MJF finally gets his shot in. He mocks all 3 of them, and he takes a rather nasty shot at Sammy Guevara, referencing the fact that Sammy had originally been engaged to one woman. That fell through, only for him to very quickly get engaged to somebody else. That, of course, being Ty Conti. I might be mispronouncing the name, but I believe it's Ty Conti. They have gotten married. I don't know if this is a shot at the idea that they aren't, in fact, still married or what. I really haven't seen Ty in a while. She may be wrestling elsewhere. I really have no clue. All 3 take their own shots back. And MJF says, you know what? we are the pillars of AEW, but I'm the one who's doing all the work and holding AEW up. He then gets in everybody's face, and it's very interesting that he very specifically goes after Jungle Boy. Physically, he's the only one he gets physical with, just planting his face, pie-facing him, and like shoving his head back. Turns around, he gets slammed in the back of the neck with a microphone, and basically all four of them kind of get into this little brawl. MJF ends up going into a cake. Quite literally, he just goes face first into a cake. Pretty good opening for the show. We then find out that Chris Jericho is being honored with, I guess, a street name, something called Chris Jericho Way. This is because he is a hometown resident of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Then we get our next big match of the night. And this is actually one of the better ones because we get, probably one of the better matches. And it basically comes down to basically the Blackpool Combat Club taking on the Dark Order. So the Blackpool Combat Club has been around for, a little over a year now. The group is comprised officially of 4 men and a mentor, one of which is William Regal. He has since, at least for the moment, left television. I don't know if he's working in the back or not, or if he's dealing with some kind of issues at home. If he is, we wish him all the best. If this is just something storyline and he's working in the back, I hope that we do see him in the near future. The other 4 men are Bryan Danielson, who currently has quote-unquote gone home. And next is Jon Moxley, the former AEW World Heavyweight Champion. In fact, the man that MJF took the title from. Followed by Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Champion Claudio Castagnoli. And Ring of Honor Pure Champion Wheeler Yuta. Now, on the other side, you've got another former AEW World Champion in Hangman Adam Page, and the Dark Order is his backup for this. The Dark Order have kind of decided they don't want to let go of this feud. On the far left, you will see in the mask, that's Evil Uno, with Adam Page in between him and Stu Grayson. Grayson, I think, was the MVP of this match, quite honestly, because everybody had a great amount of in-ring time, screen time, for lack of anything else to call it. We were told that we were getting the second crossover event between AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling during this match. So the second Forbidden Door event. So that was announced here. During the match, we had a moment where Grayson tagged in and looked like he was going to charge at Jon Moxley, only to jump not only over him, but clearing the ropes and catching Wheeler Yuta on the outside in a DDT on the apron. This was a brutal move. I loved it. All the kudos in the world for that. I mean, that was incredible on both men's part. Later on, during the match, the Blackpool Combat Club kind of get pretty brutal revenge when we see them do a triple team spike pile driver on Grayson on the floor. Now, again, I've rarely seen more than a single individual setting up a pile driver and one person trying to add on more pressure with the spike. This was a first for me. I thought it was very impressive. Adam Page did not get into the ring right off the bat, but eventually he does, tag in and starts to clean house into the ring. And during the match, Wheeler Yuta, sneaks up on Page from behind on the outside the referee's field of vision, clobbers him with the ring bell, which I thought was really kind of interesting. Very much circumventing the idea that Wheeler Yuta doesn't know how to, play dirty, because he very much does. He's been working with the Blackpool Combat Club, and these guys will play dirty if they have to. They've all been heels at one point. Later on, after this, we get another great moment from Stu Grayson as he jumps from the ring over the turnbuckles and the ring post to pull a flying move on the floor on Claudio Castagnoli. This guy, I seriously swear to God, this man needs a championship at some point in the near future. I don't care if it's the TNT belt. I don't care if it's the International Championship. This guy needs a title, and he needs it soon. Because quite frankly, I want to see more of this guy. Moxley does eventually get the win after some great interactions with Adam Page. So this was very cool. But then eventually we get the sleeper on Stu Grayson. And this was, again, a great match fought on all sides. After the end of the match, Moxley refuses to release the hold. This is, again, kind of tying into the idea of how violent the Blackpool Combat Club is, and again, further cementing their role as heels, at least for the time being. He switches from this particular sleeper into the Bulldog Choke sleeper and refuses to let go until basically Johnny Silver and Reynolds come down. I don't remember Reynolds. I think it's Alex Reynolds, but if I'm wrong, please somebody correct me on that in the comments. So the Blackpool Combat Club wins the match, and then, they end up getting run off, which is fine. Following that, we get a promo/video package of Juice Robinson versus Ricky Starks from the previous week when Robinson attacked Starks from behind. We see that this is potentially the beginnings of a new feud for Ricky Starks, who had just defeated Chris Jericho at Revolution. And again, Juice Robinson, very impressive wrestler for anybody who hasn't seen him. He's had some great matches in New Japan and elsewhere in the US. He also has had matches with Jon Moxley in AEW. In fact, they had a match for the United States Championship of New Japan Pro Wrestling about 2 years ago, maybe 3. Very impressive match. I love watching these guys wrestle. And the fact that he's now taking on Ricky Starks, who was also a very talented wrestler, makes me excited to see where they're going to go. Unfortunately, we go from something potentially interesting to something relatively short and more than a little boring, at least from my personal perspective. And that is the issue regarding Jade Cargill. Now, I know this woman has her fans. I'm not one of them. They've basically let her go undefeated since she was introduced into AEW. She is currently the first and only AEW TBS Women's Champion. She has been undefeated. She hasn't lost by any means. She has never been pinned, never tapped out, never been counted out, and never been DQ'd. She apparently had decided last week she was going to hold an open challenge to any Canadian wrestler who was willing to take her on. Turned out to be a local indie wrestler by the name, or at least indie for the United States anyway, by the name of Nicole Matthews. Cargill won in very, very quick fashion. Again, it was a relatively short match. Kind of boring, in my opinion. And after that, Renee Paquette, who is Jon Moxley's wife and one of the interviewers for AEW, gets into the ring, asks Cargill what kind of competition she's looking for, and basically has Cargill get right in her face and going, "Aren't you Canadian?" And, okay, that's a little random, because during the entire promo, she's basically going, is this the best Canada's got? Right before she starts, getting in Renee's face. Cue Taya Valkyrie. Now, I don't know if this is anybody I would recognize. It has been a long time. It kind of reminds me of, I think her name is Taya down in Lucha Underground, but again, I'm probably wrong. And I wasn't paying too much attention to the video package that came with it because there really wasn't much of one. Cargill kind of just gets out of the ring, and her sidekick, Layla Gray, tried to attack Valkyrie, who blocked it, and then used Cargill's own finisher on Layla, which was a direct message to Cargill. So it looks like they're hyping up this as a potential new match and potentially a new feud for Jade Cargill. Again, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, but this is ultimately what we got. We then get a match basically being hyped up between the one and only Tony Schiavone interviewing Ricky Starks, and from there we get, a continuation of the build-up for that. Next, we get probably the silliest match in the entire night, where we get, well, how do I put this? This is the beginnings of the entrances for both freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy, yes, that is what he's going by, meeting what appears to be a fan dressed up as the Shockmaster. And if you have a memory that goes that far back into the 90s, you probably know exactly the character I'm referencing. Even Tony Schiavone kind of got a laugh out of this. And to be fair, I like the fact that they were even referencing it. So, they at least acknowledged it. And that was kind of fun. Before they get into the whole thing with the International Championship, for some reason they cut to something called QTV. Actually, I'm wondering if I might have accidentally miswrote this script, but okay. Either way, we get a recap of Powerhouse Hobbs cheating Wardlow out of the TNT Championship with aid from QT Marshall. We get a quick bit of chatter between QT and a couple of his friends, where they revealed that they actually had stolen the TNT Championship from Wardlow the previous week, along with his ring gear. Powerhouse Hobbs puts out an open challenge for the TNT title. And for some reason, they took a couple of shots at a few various wrestlers. I'm not sure what the point was of this, but very curiously enough, they took a couple of shots at Dave Bautista, who is currently basically, I think, retiring from the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. He said he's not coming back to that particular film franchise after Guardians 3, at least as far as we know. I don't know if that means they're trying to set up that he's going to be coming in. I have a hard time believing that. I think he might be more likely to go back to WWE if he returns to wrestling at all, but that's what they went with. So yeah, that's just weird. We finally get to the actual match. Jeff Jarrett basically continuing on from the work of last week's match between Orange Cassidy and Jay Lethal, where they are now focusing on the left leg of Orange Cassidy. Jarrett smashed a guitar over Cassidy's left leg the previous week, and he tried to work over the leg during the match. He also utilized the sharpshooter, aka the Scorpion Deathlock. This was another nod to Bret Hart, who is probably the best known Canadian wrestler outside of Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, probably ever. Also probably a reference to the late great Owen Hart. Of course, both men utilized the sharpshooter / Scorpion Deathlock as a finisher. And of course, don't forget that Jeff was a tag team partner of Owen Hart at one stage in both of their careers. So again, Could be a reference to either man, but definitely a kind of shot at the Canadian fans. Satnam Singh got involved when Cassidy managed to reverse a sleeper hold in a very odd fashion. We got a quick ref bump. Referee Aubrey Edwards came down to the ring. I love this woman. She is absolutely one of my favorite wrestlers, foils, for the lack of a better term. She's the absolute foil to a lot of the heel wrestlers. She will take no crap from anyone, and she is more than willing to get physical with the wrestlers when they get in her face. So, basically, Satnam Singh ends up getting a hold of the guitar when basically Jarrett gets caught with it and ends up like throwing it aside. He's like, hey, I didn't do anything. Cassidy picks it up. Satnam grabs it after Cassidy gets a hold of it. And he basically is kind of just standing there on the apron, holding the guitar. Cassidy, like, takes a couple steps backwards, taps Aubrey on the shoulder. And it's very clear, like, during this entire section of the match, that Jeff is trying to distract her so that Satnam can whack him with the guitar. She sees Satnam with the guitar and ejects him and Sanjay Dutt from the ringside area. And basically, then we get Jay Lethal coming out of nowhere, attacking Cassidy with a stolen Golden Globe. This has been a thing for a couple of weeks now. I'm still not entirely sure what is supposed to be the story with this, but it has something to do with a feud between Jeff Jarrett's clique, for lack of a better term, versus the Best Friends, which of course is comprised of Cassidy, Trent Beretta, Chuck Taylor, and Danhausen. Amazingly enough, Cassidy kicks out at 2, and Trent Beretta shows up to take out Jay Lethal. Jay Lethal ends up basically being laid out. Trent basically walks off, having done, his work. Jeff Jarrett tries to hit his finisher, the stroke. Cassidy reverses it. One of the few times I've ever seen that reversed. Drops the challenger, gets the 1, 2, 3. Next, we got a hype moment for the main event, which of course is the triple threat trios world title match: the House of Black versus the Elite versus the Jericho Appreciation Society. Almost immediately following that, we get a promo cut by the Acclaimed. I thought it was pretty decent. I'm not sure if that was Max Caster or Anthony Bowen doing the singing, but either way, I liked it. Very interesting little thing there. I think they're kind of playing off a recent challenge by the Jericho Appreciation Society. I think their focus is still on the Guns. I could be wrong, but, who knows? Next, we get a promo by Ruby Soho, Toni Storm, and Saraya. Now, Saraya is formerly known as Paige. She used to work for WWE. She suffered a severe neck injury, something very similar to injuries that were suffered by Sting and Edge. Underwent surgery and was able to return. So I'm glad she was able to come back to wrestling. These 3 women are currently calling themselves the Outcasts. They have effectively, they were face wrestlers. They've kind of done this weird little heel turn. They started running down several women in the division, including former AEW Women's Champion Britt Baker, Sky Blue, Willow Nightingale, and former, I believe, NWA Women's Champion, and possibly even AEW Women's Champion, although I got to double check that last one, but former Women's Champion from at least one promotion, Riho, a brilliant Japanese wrestling superstar. Not entirely sure if I understand the concept behind her particular ring gear, but I mean, she's a great wrestler, and that's really all that matters. Basically, all four of these women, Riho, Baker, Hayter, Nightingale, Blue, along with Riho obviously coming down to the ring. First, it initially was Hayter and Baker coming down just to throw down with these guys because, they had an encounter at Revolution. It's 3-on-2. Then Riho shows up to make the odds even. Then we get Sky Blue and Willow Nightingale, leading to a pretty interesting little bit of scenery, for lack of a better term, where we get most of the women aside from the Outcasts in the ring. And yes, we did get a little bit of a promo in the corner there for the main event. So there's that. But, what are you going to do? It's just the way they ran this. Directly following that, we got two members of the JAS. And I cannot remember their actual names. So they've been called Daddy Magic and Cool Hand. I think Matt Menard. I mean, I could be wrong as to whether or not it's Matt Menard or who the other one is. But either way, Daddy Magic and Cool Hand. They take a shot at cutting their own promo, basically trying to call out the Acclaim, trying to start a new storyline here, maybe get their attention. And that's pretty much, that. They claim they're going to be at Rampage. I don't know if that's a challenge to the Acclaimed or not, but they're saying they're going to be at Rampage, so we'll see what happens there. Almost immediately afterwards, we see Rey Fenix cutting a promo. Rey Fenix has wrestled in Mexico, in the U.S. He was in Lucha Underground, simply under the name Phoenix, alongside, ironically enough, his brother, who also wrestled in Lucha Underground as Pentagon Dark, a.k.a. Pentagon Jr. After their arrival in AEW, he started going by the name Penta El Cerro Miedo. Rey Fenix and Penta are former AEW World Tag Team Champions and also part of the former World Trios Champions alongside Pac under the name Death Triangle. Rey Fenix has taken this time to say he's taking the open challenge that Will Hobbs has put out, so they're going to have a throwdown at the St. Patrick's Day show for Rampage. We'll have to see what happens. Rey Fenix is giving up a lot of weight there, and I think at least a foot in height. I could be wrong. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think I've ever seen these two face off in the last couple of months to a year, so if they've ever encountered each other, I have no idea exactly how much of a height difference there is. But, I mean, I'd love to see Phoenix with a championship again, because, I mean, he's pretty cool. He's pretty cool. I like the stuff he can do. He can do some crazy stunts in the ring. I've seen him literally run the top rope and do some crazy, crazy stuff. I don't know that it'll necessarily work against Powerhouse Hobbs, but at least it's a contrast in styles, and I think we'll get a chance to see both men showcase their stuff. We then get, the main event, which of course is the World Trios Championship. And we get, of course, the Elite versus the House of Black versus the Jericho Appreciation Society. So you have 9 men here in a triple threat trios match. So on the far left, you have the Elite. That is, of course, Kenny Omega, the former World Heavyweight Champion and former 1/3 of the World Trios Championship. Alongside Nick and Matt Jackson. I honestly cannot tell which is which with their heads covered. I believe Nick is the redhead and Matt is the brunette. But I could be wrong about that. I've always gotten confused by those particular setups there. So there's that. In the middle, as we see, they are the reigning and defending World Trios champions. They are the House of Black. From left to right, from center, of course, we have in the center, obviously the belts on display. On the immediate left from the name the House of Black, we have Buddy Matthews. In the middle, we have Malachi Black, for whom the stable is named. And on the immediate right, which would, ironically enough, be Malachi's left, is Brody King. And finally, we have the Jericho Appreciation Society, or at least a portion of it. And from Brody King's left, we have Daniel Garcia. In the middle, we have Chris Jericho. And on the immediate left of Jericho, which would be the far right of your screen, we have Sammy Guevara. All three of these men are former champions. So championship pedigree pretty much all around here, whether it be past or present. Daniel Garcia, former Ring of Honor Pure Champion, in fact defeated Wheeler Yuta to win the belt, only to lose it back to him. Jericho, former AEW World Champion, former Ring of Honor World Champion, former WWE World Champion, former World Heavyweight Champion under the WWE umbrella, former World Tag Team Champion on multiple occasions in WWE, former World Cruiserweight Champion at the very least in WCW, and I believe also former United States Champion in WCW, as well as former Intercontinental Champion. Really, I think the only thing that I can't tell if he's done is win King of the Ring, and maybe the Royal Rumble. Sammy Guevara, former TNT Champion, former Mixed Gender Tag Team Champion with his wife, Ty Conti. So, yeah, he's held a good couple of championships as well. So, this was a great match. We get a massive pop, not just for Jericho, who is a hometown boy, but also for the Elite, who, of course, are headed by Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega, also a hometown guy. Honestly, I thought we got one of the silliest moments of the entire show, however, in just this. I mean, this is just the Jericho Appreciation Society just kind of having fun in the middle of the match. I thought it was hilarious, but I don't know. I really have no idea what to make of that, and I'm not sure I care. So yeah, I mean, take that as you will. We had a great match here. Basically, we got a massive chant for Kenny Omega when he came out. We had Jericho and Omega in the ring right at the start of the match. Massive pop from the fans, interrupted by the not the Jericho Appreciation Society, the Blackpool Combat Club. No, excuse me again. The House of Black. I'm sorry. These guys are all kind of like, I'll explain why I was getting a little confused there with that in a minute. But basically, we got this whole thing going on during the match where we cut away from this to the Blackpool Combat Club continuing to brawl with the Dark Order during the World Trios match, which I thought was really kind of interesting because, I'm not sure if they're trying to set up potentially some kind of massive battle in the near future for the World Trios Championships. It's fully possible. But as I said, we had a great match here. Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia doing some great double team moves on Malachi Black. Nick Jackson doing a beautiful bit of, crazed fighting during a moment where he tagged in blind, where basically nobody except the referee knew he had tagged in. The House of Black brought him to ground, but, it didn't stop the match. Omega tagged in, got off a great Snapdragon suplex on Malachi, faced off with Buddy Matthews, had a great match. Another blind tag, Jericho comes in. Jericho, Omega facing off. We get another huge reaction out of the crowd. I loved it. The House of Black try to intervene in this again. They get fought off, and then finally we get Omega and Jericho finally trading shots. And again, great moment. Because again, you got to remember, this is two hometown boys going at it, and the crowd is absolutely into it. Then we get everybody starting to come in. You got, moves coming left and right. A lot of great tagging in and out from all sides. Guevara actually hit this beautiful move where he did a jump from the top rope backwards and caught Brody King with a diamond cutter. That was just awesome. There's no other way to put that. That was just awesome. We get this. I've never seen this in AEW done with this kind of a reaction. We literally had Jericho and Omega working together to pick up Brody King, I believe it was, and did a double superplex on him from the top rope. Not the second, because normally, like, if you do a superplex, you're on the second rope, you've got your opponent up on the top, but you'll sometimes see them both up on the top. You had three guys up on the top rope, and we got this double superplex, and I loved it. It was awesome. Crowd loved it. Great moment, and potentially could see, the idea of what if we ever got to see Jericho and Omega as a tag team. I thought, the idea that they were actually working together made a lot of sense. Hometown boys, they're still going to want to beat the crap out of each other for the World Trios titles. But again, hometown boys, what are you going to do? So, yeah, there you go. We get a gorgeous move by Sammy during this match. He did a shooting star press. I don't know if he did this from the second rope or the apron. I was like in the midst of, working on the script as I was watching this, so I was like partially divided in attention. But he did the beautiful shooting star to the outside on the Elite. I just don't know if he did it from the apron or from the second rope. Either way, beautiful moment. Ultimately, the match ended with the House of Black retaining. They hit the Dante's Inferno on Sammy Garcia. House of Black retains. And then we get basically this massive spillover from that earlier brawl that we got to see a cutaway to during the World Trios title match. Jake Hager comes down. Right behind him, you've got the Dark Order and the Blackpool Combat Club, just throwing down. And then you basically got everybody just fighting. This is what Jim Ross would have called a Pier 6 brawl or a slobber knocker or whatever you want to call it. And then we get a rather interesting moment right at the end of the show. Now, what ended up happening was you had the Blackpool Combat Club getting into the ring and staring down Hangman Adam Page. Now again, Page has been something of a thorn in the side to Jon Moxley, the other two members of the BCC. Obviously, they're going to side with their stablemate. What we did not expect, and what I certainly didn't expect, was to see the Elite jump into the ring behind Hangman, seemingly staring down the Blackpool Combat Club as if daring them to try to take a shot at Page. Now, for those of you who might just be brand new to AEW or who have only been aware of Page in recent months to the last maybe 2 years, Adam Page used to be a member of the Elite. In fact, he and Kenny Omega were a tag team. In fact, I think that at one point they were tag team champions. I don't know if they were tag team champions in AEW or somewhere else, but they were tag team champions at one point in AEW. I believe. But I think they lost the title to the Young Bucks, of all things. So that's kind of a whole thing there. But yes, these guys do have history together. And it's been very, very interesting to see how that whole thing's going to play out. Because when you get right down to it, well, where else could you go but to show some sign of professional respect? Adam Page defeated Kenny Omega to win his first and currently only world championship. The Blackpool Combat Club slides out of the ring. Page is confused. He knows these guys. He knows they're not the type to back down, let alone from one man. He turns around and he notices the Elite are standing right behind him. And ironically enough, this is where they faded to black. No pun intended, to the House of Black. I'm very curious to see where they're going to go with this. I would love to see if this means that they're getting around to potentially a shot at the whole reuniting of the Elite. Could this mean a return to the Elite for Adam Page? Could this mean the Elite joining forces with the Dark Order? Could this mean that Page will just potentially team with both of them, but there might not necessarily be any other further connection between them than that? I don't know. I would love to see where this goes, and I'd love to find out where they're going to take this story. From a storyline perspective, I thought this show was pretty great top to bottom. If you're wondering if it seems like there was only a few matches tonight, yeah, that's pretty much the case. I mean, we had very little in the way of actual, matches beyond the ones that I did already explain. I do like where they're going potentially with MJF because, again, we needed to find out where he was going to go for, a next championship match. And we're going to have to wait and see where this goes. We're going to have to wait and see if any of these guys are going to get a shot or if it's going to be a fatal four-way in the near future. That would be my guess, to have all three of these guys come out at once and challenge him. Could be. Could be not. I don't know. From a perspective as a fan, I'm hyped for it because, again, all three of these guys would be legit challengers for MJF. MJF himself has proven he can work great matches. And again, Danielson got one of the best matches out of him I've seen in a while. Not to say that anything I've seen in him necessarily before this was bad, but, he was kind of getting to the point where after his feud with Jericho, he kind of was just wrestling almost formula matches. Now he's got the world title, and he's proven he can move up to that new level. And he's proven he can work matches with guys that you wouldn't necessarily think he could work with. So there you go. I personally am very curious to see what's next. I think Jungle Boy is going to get something of a potential emphasis here because he's just coming off a big win on Christian Cage. We're going to get, I think, a little bit more from those two because, again, Jungle Boy's the only one that Friedman got physical with. And, because when I say that, I literally mean literally everybody else kind of went after each other. Friedman specifically went and pie-faced Jungle Boy. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out. I'm very curious to see where they're going to go with it. I'm very curious to see, if they're ready to move Jungle Boy up to the next level. Don't forget, dude's a former World Tag Team Champion alongside Luchasaurus. I don't know where Luchasaurus is. I honestly thought he'd come back with Christian Cage. He didn't. And we haven't seen Christian Cage since Revolution, but I do think Cage is going to come back at some point. He might even join forces with MJF because remember, Christian Cage has stated Jungle Boy's going to win a championship in 2023 over my dead body because I'm going to win a championship in 2023. We're going to have to see where that goes. I don't know exactly how long Christian will be gone for. He did lose that final burial match or whatever the hell they called it. That was still goofy. I'm sorry, that was goofy as hell. The way they ended that match, that was just weird. But, yeah, as far as reviews go, this is my first review for Dynamite. I realize it's a little bit rambly. I did try to script this out. So, I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. That always helps the algorithm. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment. I will try to answer whatever comments I get. I am not necessarily going to guarantee I'll be able to get to all of them right away, but I will try to answer them all if I feel that they do warrant a response. I mean, if they're just you guys making a quick comment that's just meant to be a comment, that's fine. If you guys have any questions or comments for me, by all means, I will try to answer them, and we will go from there. Again, this is my second video. I'm not sure if I'm going to be back in the next few days. I do have to see about getting my computer's battery replaced, but I will try to come back as soon as possible. I may or may not do a review of Rampage, depending on how things go with the amount of time it takes to get the battery dealt with for this computer. And if I do manage to get that done relatively quickly, I will do a review for Rampage. I will also give, if I can, my first impressions on Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which was promoted pretty heavily, actually, on this week's AEW Dynamite. It was also stated that this was, quote-unquote, the leveling up of the AEW All-Atlantic Championship to the International Championship. They gave the credit for this to the movie. I don't understand how that works. It's what they did. Don't blame me, okay? I'm just the messenger. But, yeah, again, folks, if you did like this review, by all means, please leave a like, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. I'm going to try to get more videos out. I'm still learning how to deal with OBS, so whatever mistakes I make, you're just going to have to live with, because so am I. Thank you very much for enjoying this video, if you did, and if you didn't, well, let me know what I can improve. Talk to you later, and that's pretty much it. Bye-bye.